coming up on Lawmakers. The virtual school legislation is one step closer to becoming a law. Democrats walk out as tort reform passes the Senate Judiciary Committee. And we'll visit some pre-K kids on the 10th anniversary of Georgia's pre-K program. Those stories are next here on...
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Thursday, January 27th. Here are your anchors, Gerald Bryant and Wandy Lawson.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Lawmakers. Also on tonight's broadcast, the Lieutenant Governor unveils a plan to help seniors pay for prescription drugs.
And the Commissioner of the Community Health Department says managed care should solve some ongoing Medicaid problems. But our top story tonight, the first major bill of the session passes the state Senate. Georgia is one step closer to having its first virtual high school. The bill that would create the online program passed overwhelmingly in the Senate today after nearly 3 hours of discussion. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman is standing by with the details on today's debate. Jesse.
Well, thanks, Wandy. Senate Bill 33 passed out of the Senate today with no opposing votes. However, there was a successful amendment that would give enrollment priority in the program to public school students. Although the program would ideally be open to all students, enrollment may be limited in the early goings to the school, which will provide free online classes, including AP courses.
The Georgia Virtual School will offer advanced placement courses and other courses over the internet to any Georgia student, regardless of where they live. This will be a Georgia public school.
The bill was amended in committee last week to allow private school students to participate in the virtual classes. Whether or not public school students should get priority sparked debate today in the Senate.
I am supportive of the virtual school program. All I'm trying to get at is where there's a limited space. I think the author of the bill characterized it as that last space. I'm giving in the law, to the department how they should prioritize as between a public school student and any other individual.
And that amendment that gives public school students priority to participate in the virtual school was submitted by the bill's author, Senator Dan Moody, who is chairman of the Senate Education Committee. A similar amendment submitted by Senator David Edelman failed. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Well, in other news, tort reform legislation was given a due pass by committee substitute in today's Senate Judiciary Committee, but not before 2 Democrats left the room in protest. David Zelski is standing by live with the details from the decision on Senate Bill 3. David.
Well, thanks, Wandy. Committee Chairman Preston Smith added a substitute to begin the meeting, but issues regarding amendments made Senators Robert Brown and Michael Meyer von Bremen noticeably disturbed.
I just think it's physically impossible to get something together that fast when we got through at 7:30, and I'm sorry.
Well, Senator, I appreciate that, but we pre-filed this bill weeks before the session began. The bill remained pre-filed and then was filed in its same version with no changes. So it has actually been out there in the same version for months, but thank you for your input.
Senator Robert Brown left the meeting soon after Senator Michael Meyer von Bremen.
I accepted any amendments that any committee member wanted to make to that pre-filed version and went through those very carefully and actually adopted several of those amendments. So the notion that somehow we didn't have enough time is just simply not true. There have been months to make amendments to the bill and to come forward with amendments, and it's an issue that's been around for 3 years.
And the notion that in the judiciary meeting, which is some of the hardest working committees in the Capitol, that you cannot offer amendments after a floor substitute with substantial revisions was offered, which we weren't allowed to review prior to the process, is certainly disappointing.
Regardless of the controversy, a tort reform bill did pass out of committee. Legislation that Senator Preston Smith said he's put hundreds of hours of work into over the past 3 years.
I was able to adopt a number of changes into a committee substitute, both from those that supported the bill and those that had concerns about the bill. In the end, we think we have a very reasonable bill that will improve access to quality and affordable health care in Georgia and improve the business climate in Georgia.
Now, in that bill, caps for non-economic damages remained in it, but Senator Smith's substitute did change the 24-hour emergency room immunities to a $250,000 settlement cap. Senate Bill 3 now goes to Senate rules. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much for that update, David. Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, House Majority Caucus Chair Sharon Cooper has the House Republican view on tort reform. That's tomorrow when Lawmakers broadcasts at 7 p.m.
Today, Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor announced an initiative that he hopes will help families with the rising cost of prescription drugs. It's called Georgia RX, and it would leverage buying power so that Georgians without insurance could get cheaper prices for prescription drugs. The program would be administered by the Department of Community Health and would require a $15 annual fee.
This initiative creates a self-supporting prescription drug discount program. Essentially, it calls for the state of Georgia to leverage our bulk purchasing power, like we do when we purchase drugs for region employees, for state employees, like we do when we purchase drugs for the Medicaid population, like we do when we purchase prescriptions for state prisoners. In other words, to negotiate the cheaper rates from drug companies for Georgians. Georgia RX is geared toward people who are not on Medicaid, who don't have a health benefit through their jobs, and those who can't afford health insurance with a prescription drug benefit. Specifically, this legislation applies to any resident who is over the age of 55 and all uninsured residents under age 55 earning less than 350% of the federal poverty level. To be clear, this does not apply to anyone on Medicaid or anyone with health insurance. The overall goal is to help provide the uninsured access to more affordable medicine at prices similar to what the state is paying.
The bill that would create the program has been filed by Senator Horacina Tate, but she had business back in her district, so Lieutenant Governor Taylor was speaking in her place. Taylor says Georgia RX is modeled after successful programs in Maine, Hawaii, and New Jersey. He estimates prices could be reduced as much as 25% on name-brand drugs and 60% on generic drugs.
Last year, the governor's Faith and Family Services Amendment passed out of the Senate but failed to make it out of the House. That battle will resume this year. Senators Seth Harp and David Schaefer are spearheading the legislation that was filed in the Senate today. The initiative is in the form of a resolution that needs the approval of a supermajority. That's 2/3 of both the House and Senate chambers. If successful, the amendment would allow the state to provide funds to sectarian groups doing public service work.
Just 4 months ago, a new Department of State government began operation. Bright from the start, the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning has numerous responsibilities, including running Georgia's pre-K program. Tonight, we begin a two-part series on Bright from the Start, which is brand new, and the pre-kindergarten program, which has been around for a decade.
Let's go pre-K, let's go! Woo, woo. Let's go pre-K, let's go! Woo, woo.
Marks the 10th anniversary of universal pre-K in the state of Georgia. One of those pre-Ks is at Suttles Child Development Center on the campus of Georgia State University, where they concentrate on small class sizes and making learning fun.
Mary Mac, dressed in black, buttons all up and down her back. You got them bells right out of sight.
Well, sure, playing is fun. But what are these pre-K students learning?
Well, we make cool projects, we cut out paper, we draw, and we do puzzles, we play in the blocks, we read books.
Well, that's pretty impressive. But do they learn to count snowballs?
1 snowball, 2 snowball, 3 snowball, 4 snowball, 5 snowball.
Well, that's good too, but are they learning anything about bears?
Bears don't come out of their dens in the winter. And skunks don't come out of their dens either. And flies and bats and groundhogs.
Okay, writing, math, biology. But are these pre-K students learning common sense things?
To come upstairs and get a jacket. We learn to not go outside by ourselves.
There are 72,000 students like Chrissy and Gideon and Maggie and Santana in Georgia's pre-K program, learning things outside and inside the classroom. This is a program paid for by lottery funds and a program that mandates a low teacher-pupil ratio.
All pre-K classrooms have 20 pupils with 2 teachers, so the ratio is 10 to 1, and that's very important because the smaller the ratio, the more individual attention you can give to the children. And young children need to have that one-on-one contact. They need to be held, they need to be touched. You need to be able to put them on their lap when you're talking to them. And if the ratios were any higher than that, that would be impossible.
639,000 pre-K students have been through the program so far, and Bright from the Start Commissioner Marcia Moore says there's all sorts of evidence that pre-kindergarten is much more than an experiment. It's a proven success.
First of all, we know that children do benefit from early care and education, and that they are more ready for kindergarten. We've had some research that's been conducted over the past few years to evaluate the success of children in pre-K and what is the benefit. And we have found in our most recent research that children who have attended Georgia's pre-K program exceed the national norm in many areas. And some of those areas would be our vocabulary, our letter and word recognition, which all are extremely important to literacy and a child's ability to read, and also math skills, which we know is critical for a child to be successful in school.
Plus, as Commissioner Moore points out, having a child in pre-K often allows a stay-at-home parent to enter the workplace, another attractive option to many. But Georgia's pre-K offers a lot of options. Providers have 7 different approved curriculums, and parents have a lot of options too.
Our model really gives parents choices. It gives them choices on the location, whether it's a big child care facility, maybe a small one, maybe the public school system. It gives them choices for curriculum. Pre-K actually runs from, 6.5 hours every day, but some parents need extended day care, so it gives them an opportunity to have their child in one place as well to complete the whole day. So it is based on choices.
Of course, for pre-K students like Maggie, all the facts and figures and options and choices don't seem as important as her reason for liking pre-K.
Kids is the best school ever.
We had a great time doing that story. Tomorrow we'll report on a Senate bill that directs Bright from the Start to develop a plan to give parents tools to help even younger children to succeed. Meanwhile, if you'd like to know more about Georgia's pre-K program or any of the Department of Early Care and Learning programs, the website is www.osr.state.ga.us. Meanwhile, over the years, the debates over abortion, evolution, and the Georgia state flag have often made their ways to the Georgia General Assembly, and this year is no exception. Lawmakers Chris Knight joins us live from the Capitol with more on that story. Chris.
Well, Gerald, while these controversial issues don't seem to go away, some bills filed in the House hope to end these debates once and for all.
3 separate bills tackling 3 major issues. House Bill 93 would outlaw abortions in Georgia, but as the bill's author, Representative Bobby Franklin, points out, there is one exception.
Now, we do, when we define abortion in the bill, we do define it in such a way that a physician's medical determination that something needs to be done in order to try to save both the mother and the child, in which the child dies. That's tragic, but that would not be considered an abortion.
Another issue frequently debated is teaching the theory of evolution in Georgia's public schools. Representative Ben Bridges says House Bill 179 would end the debate by sticking to the facts.
If the origin of life is taught in our public schools, it will be taught scientific facts.
And finally, the debate over the Georgia state flag. Some want to keep the current flag adopted in 2003, while others want to go back to the flag adopted in 1956.
This will end the debate.
Representative Tim Bearden says he's confident House Bill 15 is the answer.
House Bill 15 is a non-binding referendum to allow the people of Georgia to finally get the chance to vote with the 56 flag on a ballot. And that flag vote would have the 56 flag and the current flag that's flying now.
And whether these pieces of legislation pass through the House and Senate remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, these issues will be debated yet again this session. Reporting live, I'm Chris Knight for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Chris. Remind us of the status of these three bills right now.
Okay, Gerald, the bills are in their respective committees for further review.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris.
Well, the Legislative Black Caucus could have bipartisan membership for the first time since Reconstruction. Caucus Chair Stan Watson earlier told me he's still trying to persuade Houston County Republican Willie Talton to join the 48-member caucus. This despite the fact that Talton declined the invitation 2 weeks ago, calling the caucus divisive. If Representative Talton does not join the Black Caucus, it would be the first time that there was not full African-American participation since the Black Caucus was formed in the 1960s.
I have personally asked him to join, and supposedly he's still thinking about it. I made mention that in Florida, they have a Republican female who is a member of the Florida Black Caucus. And I think the views from a Republican, African-American Republican, they need to be heard too. And also that can be the person, a conduit that can take our message back to the leadership in the Republican Party.
I'm wondering, in light of the November elections, how did that impact black legislators here in Georgia?
I think it had a tremendous impact on African-American legislators. I think that one of the first things that we had an impact on was the actual chairmanships of committees. I think that we lost some vital resources, probably 133 years of total service in chairmanships in the African-American community. We had some 12 chairpersons, on last year, from children and health to subcommittees and appropriation, just a number of things. We even had state institution property and public utilities. So I think that some of the experience has been lost, and I think that it's vital that our segment of the population, some 3 million African Americans and Georgians, are heard.
And in terms of a strategy for doing that, of course, the Republican Party would say that when the Democrats were in power, certainly you didn't have a number of Republicans having committee chairmanships. Therefore, when the power shift comes along, it's probably inevitable that these things will happen. But what does the Legislative Black Caucus plan to do in order to maintain its constituents' issues in the forefront?
Well, I think we have to work and continue to work across party lines. We have to make sure, first of all, that we have access. If you don't have access, your needs and your ideas and opinions are never heard. So I think we need to, first of all, have access to those committees where our problems or our agendas are most prevalent, I think in education and health care and economic development. But we can have that access in those committees, first of all, by being a part of the committees. And if we're not part of the committee, we need to do what the Republicans did in past years when they were not in power, attend those meetings. So I think that what we have to do to make sure our opinions and ideas and input are heard. But we also have to have access with our Speaker. He is the Speaker of the House for the next 2 years, and they are in power. So we have to reach out to the Speaker and make sure that our agenda items is heard. And then lastly, we have to make sure that the Governor, we have the ear of the Governor. And as Chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus, I have asked and requested the Governor to meet with us at least bi-monthly with the members of the Black Caucus, the officers. And he agreed to do that, and I thank him for that. And I think that's one of the things that we have to do now is access. Communication is going to be vital for us in this new administration.
And the Legislative Women's Caucus has moved to a tri-chair system with a Democratic, Republican, and African-American leader. Senator Gloria Butler says that the female legislators are in a unique position to highlight overlooked issues.
Women legislators usually look out for legislation geared towards women, all women, not just African-American women or Republican women or Democratic women. It's legislation that benefits all the women of Georgia.
And as you look specifically to this legislative session, can you talk to me about what some of those items might be?
Well, for instance, we did a piece of legislation in committee on yesterday, in our caucus meeting on yesterday, on obesity. And that's an issue that affects all Georgians, not just women, but all Georgians. And we do have a bill in the House that's being presented by Representative Randall that will bring some focus and attention to that issue, because it is an illness. It's not just people being fat, heavier than they would like to be. It's an illness that needs to be treated, and we need to bring that attention to that issue so that people will know and learn how to be treated and treat it.
Now, since the caucus is, of course, made up of people from both sides of the aisle, when you all come together and decide what it is that you're going to focus on as a group, how does that process work?
Well, we put it out to all of the members. we ask all of the members to present their legislation to the Women's Caucus. And we take a vote on the legislation that we will focus on. Being this is my very first time being one of the tri-chairs, I'm not familiar with all of the ways that we'll do that, but I do know in the past I have been asked to present legislation that I was interested in and I thought the Women's Caucus would be interested in. So I believe that we will still use that same process.
Well, you know, sometimes the issues that have been important to the Women's Caucus have not perhaps been considered to be a top priority, particularly in a tough budget year. And I'm wondering, in the areas of perhaps some of the child welfare and some of the other women's issues that you all have addressed in the past, how do you overcome that in light of the fact that the budget does have to be maintained at a certain level?
Well, there are certain things that we can do to bring attention, such as having meetings, having briefings, doing town hall meetings for our citizens so that we can bring more attention to those issues and get more support. And we also have to work closely with our male counterparts in the Senate and the House.
All right. Well, it sounds like you all are working across the aisle and, of course, across the genders as well.
Yes,
Senator Gloria Butler, thanks so much for joining us on Lawmakers.
Thank you.
Well, Georgia's Commissioner of Community Health says moving Medicaid more in the direction of managed care could solve some of the problems that the beleaguered health delivery system is having. Tim Burgess testified before a House Appropriations Subcommittee today and was questioned about the effects of Medicaid cuts in recent budgets.
If there were a way to put this budget together without any reductions to any of these providers, I think we'd be doing that. But with a Medicaid program that's growing at the rate that it's going, even with $150 million worth of new resources into this budget, there's still another $130 million worth of cuts that have to be made to balance this budget.
I guess what I'm really asking is, from a policymaker standpoint, at what point are we going to break the back of our providers? I mean, are we in any danger of losing any additional providers, or what does it really mean to them? And what is it going to mean moreover to our constituents and to the citizens?
I personally believe that moving to managed care will actually help that, because I believe that putting the requirement on the managed care companies that they will have to build the appropriate networks to provide all of the types of care that's necessary for their Medicaid population in order to have a successful bid will put the onus and the pressure and require their expertise to build those networks. And we would hope that when those bids come in April, these various care management companies are able to build the kinds of networks and entice providers back in to their networks or build networks that have sufficient numbers.
Burgess said the provider bids for managed care are expected to begin arriving in late April and early May.
Well, studying the legislative process and current issues, over 100 middle schoolers descended on the Capitol today as part of the 2005 Youth Legislative Conference. Lawmakers Michael Riddle has that story.
Sponsored by Georgia Close-Up, the two-day event brought students from all over the state to the Capitol to see the political process firsthand, meet legislators, and debate a wide range of issues.
We're trying to focus mainly on state-related issues and things that pertain to children and youth. We've been talking a lot about school hours and year-round school and uniforms, but also some more national issues like war on terror, and we just got done doing a workshop on the separation of church and state.
The students, who were selected from middle schools all over Georgia, got to meet the governor as well as the two youngest members of the House. Representative Alicia Thomas Morgan, the youngest person ever elected to the House, expressed how important it is for young people to make their voices heard.
And not wait until they're 35 to get involved in politics, but to get involved right now as a young person. And hopefully that activity and that activism and that involvement will inspire them to want to run for office as well, and make sure that they too have a seat at the table.
Representative Matt Dollar noted how important it is that young people both learn about their government and understand its impact on them.
Gives them some real life perspective to it, so they're not just reading about it in a book. So when they go back and they continue to learn about politics and continue to learn about government, they can actually see it in effect. Well, this legislative conference draws to a close. There's another one scheduled in February for high school students. For more information about all of their events throughout the year, visit www.georgiacloseup.org. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Michael Riddle.
And today was the third annual Hispanic Day at the Capitol, and Governor Sonny Perdue was on hand to issue a proclamation to the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Lawmakers Marcus Howard has that story.
I'm proud today to proclaim once again
today, Hispanic Day in Georgia, and encourage all of our Georgia citizens to join me in celebrating the Hispanic contributions to our wonderful state.
Roughly 600,000 people of Hispanic origin reside in Georgia. Today's event underlines the impact they're making on the state.
I think this is very important because it puts out to the community the recognition from the legislators and the governor and people that make a difference as to what they are going to do with the Latino community.
The Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Hispanic Day is an opportunity to show the people of Georgia that the Hispanic community is a community of entrepreneurship.
With immigration reform listed as a priority for President Bush's second administration, State Representative David Casas is optimistic about the role Hispanics will play in shaping the future of the country.
I think, like any immigrant group, we're going to participate. We're going to build this country in the next century. We're going to be part of the growth and the prosperity that this country has always had, that's experienced in the 20th century, and now we're going to experience in this new century.
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Marcus Howard.
Well, it was wild times at the Capitol today as the governor and the Department of Natural Resources recognized the 2004 Forestry for Wildlife Partners. Lawmakers Angela Vondrasek has that story.
Georgia's Forestry for Wildlife program's goal is to enhance wildlife conservation through a public-private partnership.
We judge partners based upon 5 different criteria. They need to have a wildlife conservation plan that details their land management. They need to have outreach and education, recreation opportunities, conservation of sensitive sites and endangered species. They need to have strong partnerships.
Today, Governor Sonny Perdue presented awards to 5 Georgia companies in recognition of their outstanding contributions to wildlife and wild places.
We do all kinds of different things at Plum Creek. We work with the DNR on some very specific species of interest, like the swallowtail kite, which is a high-value species in southeast Georgia. We have a lot of habitat for swallowtail kite and swallowtail kite nesting sites on our properties.
Recipients of the award included Georgia Power, International Paper, Mead West Vaco, Temple Inland, and the newest partner, Plum Creek. I'm Angela Vondrasek for Lawmakers.
Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, more about Bright from the Start, Georgia's Department of Early Care and Learning. Plus, a House Judiciary Subcommittee meeting about legislation to curb methamphetamine production gets heated, and a rally in support of Governor Perdue's Faith and Family Services Amendment. We'll have all those stories and the latest from under the Gold Dome. That's tomorrow at our regular time of 7 p.m. If you missed any part of this broadcast, tune in when Lawmakers is rebroadcast tomorrow morning at 5:30 on GPB. And just a reminder for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Lawmakers is streamed live and then archived on our website every night that we're on the air. Coming up next on Georgia Public Broadcasting, New This Old House Hour. That program is next here on GPB.
And happy birthday, the University of Georgia, 220 years old today. That mentioned in the legislature today as well. That's our program. The 7th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gerald Bryant. Go Dogs!
And I'm Wandy Lawson. For everyone here at Lawmakers, good night.
Bye.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.